The B-2 Spirits were already 30,000 feet over the most defended airspace in the Middle East, running dark and silent, when the weapon that had never once been used in combat left the bomb bay and started its fall toward a mountain in Iran. That's the moment worth sitting with before anything else, because everything that came before it, decades of diplomacy, years of intelligence collection, months of planning, was really just the run-up to those few seconds of freefall. I'm Ryan, former F-15 Echo Strike Eagle pilot, former F-16 Thunderbird, current airline pilot, and someone who spent years watching this exact confrontation build toward exactly this outcome. Let's start where it mattered most, then work backward and forward from there, because that's the only way this story actually makes sense. By the time American radar operators and satellite analysts confirmed impact, Iran's most fortified, most deeply buried nuclear enrichment site no longer existed in any operational sense. That facility was Fordow, dug into a mountain under roughly 300 feet of solid rock, specifically because Iranian planners believed no conventional weapon on the planet could reach it. They were right about that for a long time. Then the Air Force pulled the Massive Ordnance Penetrator, designated the GBU-57, out of the inventory and proved them wrong in a single night. This bomb is over 20 feet long, weighs roughly 30,000 pounds, and punches through as much as 200 feet of reinforced concrete before it even detonates. Only one aircraft in the American arsenal can carry it, the B-2 Spirit. And until that mountain took a direct hit, this weapon had never been used in actual combat, not once since it entered service. Think about that for a second. The most powerful non-nuclear bomb ever built sat in reserve for years, waiting for exactly one target, and last night it found it. Now let's rewind, because the strike didn't come out of nowhere, and understanding why it happened right now, not 5 years ago, not 5 years from now, tells you almost everything about where this goes next. For roughly 2 decades, Iran ran the same playbook with the international community. Negotiate, stall, enrich a little further, sign something vague, stall again, enrich a little more. Every sanctions package, every UN resolution, every diplomatic round got treated the same way in Tehran, as a clock they were trying to run out rather than a deal they intended to honor. The entire strategy rested on one bet, that they could creep close enough to a working nuclear weapon that any American president would eventually decide a strike was too late, too costly, or too politically toxic to order. And for a long time, that bet looked like it was paying off. Then the numbers changed. Multiple intelligence assessments earlier this year put Iran's enriched uranium stockpile at 90% purity, which is weapons grade, with enough fissile material on hand for what analysts described as several warheads, not one. Several. And the breakout window, the gap between a political decision in Tehran to build a bomb and actually holding one, had shrunk from well over a year down to somewhere between a few weeks and a couple of months. That's the line every American administration for 3 decades swore they'd never let Iran cross, while insisting Iran would never actually reach a weapon. Saying it and enforcing it turned out to be 2 very different commitments, and Iran had spent 20 years betting no president would actually call it. That bet got called, and the House lost the entire program in one night. So here's roughly how it likely came together operationally, and I want to be upfront that some of this is still open source analysis rather than confirmed Pentagon detail, so treat exact aircraft counts and sortie numbers as provisional until there's an official briefing. The B-2 package most likely flew out of Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri, possibly staging through Diego Garcia, each aircraft capable of carrying 2 of the bunker-busting bombs. Early satellite imagery suggests more than one B-2 was involved. What does appear corroborated across multiple independent sources is that strikes hit at least 3 sites: Fordow, Natanz, and the Isfahan Nuclear Technology Center, the 3 facilities that together formed the backbone of Iran's enrichment and weaponization effort. Fordow was always the priority target, because it was the one built specifically to survive everything short of exactly this kind of weapon. The bombers didn't go in unescorted either. A strike this complex requires what's called a strike package. Layers of aircraft each doing a specific job, not unlike an offensive line, clearing a path before the play even develops. Electronic warfare aircraft, almost certainly EA-18G Growlers, flying off a carrier in the region, would have been jamming and blinding Iranian air defense radar, systems that were never designed to cope with a coordinated, multi-axis electronic attack against targets they can't even track. Alongside that, expect a wave of cruise missiles, likely Tomahawks fired from naval vessels, hitting surface-to-air missile batteries and command nodes to strip away Iran's ability to shoot back before the bombers ever entered contested airspace. Only then do the B-2s arrive, flying essentially invisible to radar, dropping ordnance Iran had no credible defense against, even if they'd seen it coming. That sequencing isn't guesswork on my part. It's exactly how the Air Force and Navy have trained for a scenario like this for years, even though the precise composition of last night's package is still filling in through open sources. I want to be fair here because there are real questions worth sitting with instead of waving away. Did the United States have clear legal authority for this? The administration is leaning on the 2001 authorization for use of military force, plus an urgent threat assessment tied to Iran's breakout timeline, and legal scholars are going to argue about whether that holds up for months. Was this actually permanent, or did Iran already move enough material and enough scientific knowledge out of these sites that the program survives in some diminished form? Destroying a building doesn't erase what people know, or where they hid the rest of the stockpile. And honestly, nobody will have a confident answer to that for weeks. What can be said with confidence is that Iran's physical capacity to enrich uranium at scale is gone, and rebuilding it, even with the knowledge intact, requires years and billions of dollars Iran doesn't have easy access to under current sanctions pressure. And then there's retaliation, which is the question I'm not going to soften for you. It's real, it's significant, and anyone telling you Iran just absorbs this quietly isn't being straight. Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, militia networks scattered across Iraq and Syria, all of that is Iran's actual playbook for hitting back without a direct state-on-state war, and expect it activated. The real question isn't whether Iran responds, it's whether their leadership, which has stayed in power 45 years by carefully avoiding fights that trigger a direct American military response, now believes their survival is no longer guaranteed, regardless of what they do. That's the scenario Central Command is gaming out right now, and it's why you're going to see carrier strike groups repositioning and additional air defense assets flowing into the region over the next several days. Watch the Strait of Hormuz too. Roughly 20% of the world's oil moves through there, and if Iran tries mining it or harassing shipping with fast attack craft, this stops being a regional story and becomes a global economic one. The Navy has planned for that contingency for years. Planning for it and executing it under live fire are not the same thing. Now, the part I actually understand from the inside, because I've flown combat sorties myself, just never against a target like this. The B-2 has no wingman. It's a single ship platform, meaning the pilot and co-pilot in that cockpit were roughly 12,000 miles from home, flying a $2 billion aircraft loaded with bombs that weigh 30,000 pounds each, straight into one of the most heavily defended airspaces on Earth. A round trip from Missouri to Iran and back, with aerial refueling, can run past 30 hours. 30 hours of radio silence, stealth profile discipline, and running contingency after contingency through your head with nobody to talk it through with but the person next to you. I remember what it felt like flying the Strike Eagle in combat, and the truth is, the weight of it doesn't really land while you're still in the jet. It lands afterward, in the debrief room, staring at battle damage assessment imagery, when the adrenaline drains out and what you actually did becomes real in a very different way. I think about that a lot, what it must be like to sit in that chair last night, knowing what you just carried across an ocean and back. Whether you'd have wanted that seat or not is a fair thing to wonder about yourself. There's a bigger signal buried in all of this that most coverage is going to miss entirely. This wasn't only a message to Tehran. Every government on the planet that has spent 30 years watching Washington draw red lines and then quietly not enforce them, North Korea, China, Russia, all of them just watched something different happen. The GBU-57 sat in the inventory for a reason. The B-2 kept flying for a reason. Last night, the rest of the world found out that reason is real and it works, which is a deterrence message that travels a lot further than the Middle East, and it's going to land very differently in Pyongyang than it does anywhere in Europe. So where does this leave things? Iran's enrichment infrastructure, built over years, worth billions of dollars, designed from the ground up to be untouchable, is gone as of this morning. The knowledge doesn't vanish with the concrete, and the political will inside Iran to rebuild under threat of a second strike is genuinely unclear right now. The retaliation risk is real, and the next few days are going to be some of the tensest the region has seen in a long time. But as someone who understands what it actually takes to plan and fly a mission like this, what happened last night was executed about as cleanly as this kind of operation ever gets. In darkness, in silence, with no warning given. Whether that ends Iran's ambitions for good or just buys years is genuinely an open question, and I'd be curious how many years you'd guess before this gets tested again. I'll keep tracking this as it develops.